Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is a man we call Uncle B, Blaine Fowler, the man with the biceps, national champion quarterback at BYU, college football insider. Blaine, welcome back to the show.
What's going on? It feels weird not to be in there with you guys, but we had, basketball media day yesterday. Very important.
Yeah, the basketball guys kind of booted you out. Sorry about that, man.
I know. I talked to those guys after, though, to Kyle Collinsworth and to the crew. They look like they're in shape and ready to roll.
Absolutely they do. Let's hope that the BYU football team is in shape and ready to roll as much as they possibly can be against UConn on Friday. But before we turn the page to the Huskies, I want to ask you, because you were at the Big House, you watched everything unfold from the sideline. Of everything that happened on Saturday for BYU, what would you address as the Cougars' number one concern?
Well, I think it was the number one concern are things that you did wrong that you can fix. And because you can address those right away. You have to put them number one. And if you had a chance to watch after further review last night, I came away from the game thinking BYU just got manhandled on both sides of the ball. And I'm not saying there weren't times that they did, but I thought that was a general theme. And when Brian Logan and Dave Nixon and I and Dave McCann started to look at film, we went, oh, wow. On defense on this play, they're in the wrong gap. That's why this guy gets a play. Oh, look at this next play. The linebacker overran a play. He's in the wrong gap. Oh, look at this play. They blew a coverage. Oh, and so play after play after play, we recognized that there were assignment errors that had they been assignment sound, we hear that term, Bronco uses it all the time, would have been much more difficult for Michigan to move the football the way they did. And so, to me, I don't know, maybe I'd be more concerned if they just got manhandled, but my number one thought on the game is, okay, defensively, I'm concerned that they weren't assignment sound, but that's fixable. And so I think that they can get better defensively, get back to where they were. And sometimes when you get beat up early in a game, you start doing things that, thinking, I've got to go make a play. So you go outside of your assignment, and then it compounds the problem. And maybe that's what happened in that game. But I expect the defense to be much better from this point forward.
We just played a fun new game called Meet That Running Back. We'll see if Hine and Brown are healthy and can play. If not, we talked about Francis Bernard and Riley Burt and Nate Carter. What do you think of those first two, especially Bernie and Burt?
It was Bernie and Burt and not Ernie and Burt.
Yeah,
I like that.
I guess that. Then someone else mentioned that. I'm not taking credit for that.
Well, we know that Bernard will run over people. We just don't know much because they just haven't had much game experience. And really, if it's down to those three, so if Adam can't get himself healthy and Algie can't get himself healthy, then the pressure is really on Nate Carter. And the reason is because he's had experience in there. He understands the packages. They can trust him that he'll know who he's supposed to pick up in pass protection. And we saw flashes of really, really good play from him last year. It just seems like this year, that offensive line on the plays that have been called for him haven't been able to create creases. Because he's not the guy that's going to go break a tackle like Adam Heaney's been doing when somebody misses the first guy and then make that guy miss and turn the run into something bigger. He is the guy that if you create a crease for him inside and he gets to the linebacker and secondary level, can turn some normal plays into bigger plays. And I think the BYU's offensive line, this is not going to be as challenging a group in UConn up front. Although they're very good defensively, they're not as physical as Michigan or UCLA up front. So maybe, just maybe, BYU can create some creases and we can see the Nate Carter we saw last year.
Blaine, you and I were talking yesterday about rush defense totals through 4 games across the country. Boise State number 1, Nebraska number 7, Michigan number 10, UCLA number 98. So should we be that surprised that BYU struggles to establish a run game this early in the season after what we have seen on the field?
That was a revelation, and you and I were talking about that offline yesterday, and I was going, oh, well, this makes a little more sense to me. This makes me not quite as disappointed that they're not running the football. And the best sign for me was they ran the football pretty well at the end of the Boise State game, and they carried over to UCLA. So it shouldn't be a surprise that they were able to run the ball in UCLA. Everybody's running the ball in UCLA. But that last quarter, especially at Boise State, is a glimpse to what's possible. Now, they haven't been consistent enough doing it. And sometimes it's hard to get momentum going when you're playing against back-to-back-to-back teams that are that good versus the run. And this is a UConn team that They're solid defensively, but they're not overwhelming with physical presence defensively. And I think BYU's offensive line may have a chance to get more of a push and create some holes. And then the run game is an interesting thing in terms of momentum. You start knocking a few people around, the line starts to get into it, the backs start to run harder. We saw that at the end of the Boise State game with Adam Heaney, and we saw it in the UCLA game. And this is an offensive group that desperately needs some confidence in the run game.
UConn is 73rd, by the way, in rush defense, so not top 10. That's good news. BYU is 89th. You look at
they're better in pass defense than they are in run defense.
Yes.
So that's good. That's good for BYU.
Yeah, I like Olafonu. I like Andrew Adams. Their safeties. They've got some good back end guys. When you look at BYU's receivers, that will match up with those safeties. I thought BYU's receivers were good through the first 3 games. This is the strongest group on offense, in my opinion. Playmakers, elite, not elite, doesn't really matter. Just go and make plays, right? But Guy Holiday called out his group yesterday, Blaine, saying you can't be 5'11" and play like you're 6'6". What do the receivers need to do the rest of the way?
Well, they've got to be more aggressive. Now, what I'm most interested in the first quarter of this game is, does UConn go out of their normal game plan, and do they come up and try to do what Michigan did to BYU, and that is play press coverage on the wideouts all over the field. And when I say press coverage, getting right up close to the line of scrimmage, getting in their face, grabbing onto them, putting their hands on them, throwing the timing off and making it difficult for them to get open. That's what Michigan did. I do not think that, I know because I've watched film on both, they don't have the personnel that Michigan has to get away with that. So Michigan's really, really solid physically, in combination of size and speed. They can get away with that against BYU. They had a really good game plan. I'm not sure UConn can, but I'm still waiting to see if they come out and line up like that. And if they do, then BYU's receivers can't, in their minds, go, gosh, this guy is holding me. Hey, come on, ref, are you not seeing this guy holding me? Who cares if he's holding you? You got to get free. You got to be just as aggressive back. You got to match physical play with physical play. You got to match aggression with aggression. And that's what this receiving corps lacked at Michigan. Michigan got up in their face, and BYU's receivers shrunk instead of stepped up to the plate and matched their physical play and intensity.
Blaine Fowler with us on BYU Sports Nation, national champion quarterback here for the Cougars, college football insider. Follow him at Twitter on Twitter at bfowler16. Tanner Mangum looked rattled for the first time, and we knew this was going to happen because he's a freshman. Yeah, he's 22, but he's still a freshman making just his 3rd start against Michigan. When you look at the tape of what Tanner did against the Wolverines, and there wasn't much help around him, running backs, wide receivers, offensive line, what does he have to specifically improve?
Well, any young quarterback, the number one thing that he has to do is be decisive. So you make a decision, and you got to get the ball up on time. And so he's got to just be confident if he throws it out there, somebody's going to make a play for him. And young quarterbacks have a tendency to just want to hold on to the football, extend the play by getting out of the pocket so they can buy themselves a little more time until all the confusion in there sorts itself out. And you can see a lot better when you're outside the pocket than you can standing in the pocket. I mean, it's just a fact. There's just not as many huge bodies in front of you when you get out there, and you only have to look at half of the field. So you just got to be confident and sling it. And Michigan created a dual problem for him in that they played press coverage, so he really didn't have anybody open. And then they didn't overrun him in their pass rush. They stayed in the rush lanes with their 4 guys typically, and their game plan was, we are not going to let that kid get outside the pocket where he can see and be more comfortable. I don't know if UConn, again, has the personnel to be able to do that, but he's got to be confident if he's standing in there to just set his feet and let it fly, and then hopefully good things will happen. And he's got to get more help from those wide receivers. And Michigan took away the receivers and had a good game plan in the way they rushed the passer. It was a very, very good game plan. It caused them problems. Perfect game plan for a young quarterback. But to do a perfect game plan like that, you got to have the personnel to do it. And hey, let's face it, Michigan's a pretty good football team.
Yeah, I hope Michigan challenges Michigan State and Ohio State just to kind of validate what kind of performance that was, because that was I'm not sure. I don't think Michigan's going to be as good as they were Saturday again this season. I don't think BYU will be that bad either. And that's the good news is BYU has 8 games left, 5 of which are at home. Connecticut's not the same kind of team that BYU's played, but when I look ahead and I see East Carolina and Cincinnati, there will certainly be challenges for BYU. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, Blaine, we talked a lot of offense. Where do you start to begin to pick up the pieces for BYU?
Well, they've got to have a mindset change in the front seven where they've got to be more physical. Their linebackers have to decide they're going to play downhill. When they've got a gap assignment and the run starts to come toward that gap, they can't wait and catch the lead blocker or catch the back 4 yards past line of scrimmage. They've got to – we saw Harvey Longy do it. Step up into the line of scrimmage, make contact, plug things up, and do your assignment. So they have to play with a little more of an edge to them in that front seven. But most importantly, we go back to what we started with, and that is you have to trust that the guy next to you is going to have his gap, and you're going to get your gap. And he can't play outside of the defense. You've got to have every gap covered that's assigned to be covered and do what you're supposed to do. Physically, they're good enough to execute that. But when they get out of position, they put themselves in bad positions. And that's what we saw in that Michigan game way too many times.
Blaine Fowler with us on BYU Sports Nation. We've talked a ton about what happened, or what didn't happen for that reason, at Michigan. Now BYU tries to turn the page against UConn. What do you want to see from the Cougars on Friday night, more than anything, to validate that Michigan debacle was a one-time thing?
I want to see the defense flying around and playing loose and getting to the football, but doing it the right way, so within their assignments. And I think that if they don't shut this UConn team down, then there are major problems, because this UConn team has not been stellar offensively. They've struggled, and they've consistently struggled. BYU's numbers are a little misleading offensively because they were just so awful against Michigan that now you look at their national rankings and they just dropped off the face of the earth. They were middle of the pack, and now they're bottom of the pack by virtue of one game. UConn's been consistently struggling on offense, so BYU should shut this UConn team down. Then offensively, I want to see them get to their quick pass game, give Mangum some easy throws that he can complete a high percentage of, and they have got to establish this run game. If they're going to live up to their potential and either win them all or win all but one down this stretch so they finish where we thought they could if they were 2-2 at the beginning of the year, they are going to have to run the football better. And I think that starts this week. So the number one thing I'm watching for is, even though they may not have Adam Hine or Algie Brown, it's on the offensive line, and perhaps Nate Carter has to carry some of this. They've got to be able to move bodies and run the football if we're going to have great hope for them for the rest of this season.
Blaine Fowler, I would like to congratulate you on a no-beep interview.
Yeah. Nice
You
job.
know, that ought to set the tone.
Hang up quick.
We've been talking about mistakes on the defense and assignments, some on the offense. We didn't make a mistake today, so hopefully that'll carry over to game day.
That is
We
a
need to
great
end this
sign.
phone call before we fumble the ball.
Okay, let's get off here. Let's get off. Talk to you guys later.
All right, Blaine, thanks.